Here.
I
I walked in, they said, oh, we're glad you're here. Two people wanted to say, oh, shoot. Oh, no. A little bit.
Are we ready, Shirley? Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Rapid City Area School Board of Education study session. Shirley, can we get a roll call, please?
Troy Carr,
Here.
Jamie Clapham. Here. Christine Stephenson,
Here.
Deb Baker,
Here.
Kate Thomas,
Here.
Michael Berkman.
Here.
And Mr. Swan, I haven't heard from. Maybe he's still on his way.
All right, thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the proposed agenda. So moved. Okay, Mr. Berkman and Mrs. Baker. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. This time we have persons wishing to address the school board. Oh, I didn't get any blue sheets. Another miracle.
Sarah's here, so don't tell her.
Okay, we do have one, and I would just like to say the difference between a study session, open speaker forum, and a regular board meeting is that the subject of open forum comments during a study session have to be on the subjects that is on the agenda. So at this time, Florence Thompson.
Whoops, okay. Well, I guess I can't do that. There we go. Maybe. Okay. My name is Florence Thompson. I'm president of South Dakota Parents Involved in Education, SDPI. And, oops, I just lost my feed here. I'm also a retired school psychologist with over 40 years experience as a psychologist in the schools. I'm going to be speaking about the teaching, learning, and innovation. And I'd like to say that this is not meant to be a criticism of anyone personally. It's more or less an overview of the system. I'm sure that all the people involved in this system are wonderful, dedicated, talented, sincere people and well-meaning. What we have now is top-down control, and this has become all-encompassing with Common Core. We never used to have top-heavy administration and micromanaged curriculum. Yet teachers taught and children learned well. The achievement test scores in South Dakota and in Rapid City were very strong. And those were real standardized tests. The comparisons of actual test scores of kids across the nation. And so they were accurate measurements of what is happening in education and how our group was doing, our particular local groups. What we have now is not standardized tests. It is a test to the standard. And the standards are the Common Core standards. They're all called South Dakota standards, but they did that in every state. They rebranded them. So it's still Common Core. And if you look at your materials, you will see that they are Common Core compliant and that the tests are, this SBAC test is Common Core compliant. Judging from all the education ease, i.e. BS, and computer-generated monitoring and control that goes on, our kids should be learning geniuses. I mean, if you look at this stuff, it's impressive. You know, wow, we've covered every little thing. And we've got standards up the wazoo. But sadly, we know that the kids are not doing that well. So the solution is always get a bigger hammer, more programs, more control, more micromanagement. I think you should realize that at its core, Common Core was never meant to improve education. It was intended to be a control system to get control of the minds of the younger generation. And that way you could control the government and the lives of the next generation. This is a downward spiral of stressed out teachers, rebellious, mal-educated students, and disintegrating society. We are seeing an exodus from the public schools. And this is students leaving to be homeschooled, to be church schooled, to be privately schooled in other ways. In some areas, they're using charter schools to try to alleviate this problem. And we see an exodus of teachers from the system. They're stressed out, they're micromanaged, they're not allowed to teach the way they think they should be able to teach, and not be able to allow to teach good, solid values. So this is the situation we find ourselves in. I know it's all rainbows and unicorn poop and stuff when you come in here. But the thing of it is, people are not happy with the public education system. It's no longer public and it's no longer education. It's become indoctrination. So please try to keep an eye on the bigger picture. Don't get lost in the minutia. And I know, as I said, I know you're all well-meaning people. You're trying to do the right thing. And you've been told that this is the right thing to do. So, but try to keep your eyes open. Is it really working that well? Why
Ms.
is
Thomas.
everybody leaving?
That's time. Thank you so much. Any board response? All right, see, the chair recognizes Mrs. Clapham.
Very brief, just, none of us being in the boardroom on the other side of doors doesn't necessarily know what happens in all the workings of things. But I would say in the concept of micromanage, I think that our district, just the Bath adoption alone last year was a perfect example when we took over 25 of our own staff to spend months and months and dozens of our students to assess a math curriculum, to imply that it is micromanaged by some large controlling entity. That's just inaccurate. That is something I think I really applaud our district for collaboration, for asking our teachers, asking our staff to help determine what works for them. Curriculums are chosen by district, not by the state. The state doesn't choose our curriculum for us. So I just always want to make sure that we have accurate statements about what's happening in our district, not rumors or falsehoods. And yes, SBAC is used, but there are also multiple other assessments that are used as well. We use MAT, we use Acadians, we use ACTs. So I think we just need to flesh out our facts when we are looking at how curriculum in this district is chosen, how we address and meet our standards.
Thank you. Any other board member comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, items for discussion. A, teaching, learning, and innovation presentation, and the chair will recognize, unless Mrs. Swigert, you have something, chair will recognize Director Seals.
Thank you, President Carr. Thank you, board. For those of you that may be watching at home, you're not going to see me during this presentation. My camera is not working right now. So You can hear my voice hopefully, and the board can see me in person. And we're here tonight to talk about professional development, our early release time, and our teachers and our administrators and how we gear support towards each of them. So when Superintendent Swaggart, help me. When Superintendent Swaggart asked me to have this presentation, I collaborated with my team and took a big set of items or topics and tried to make it reasonable. So for professional development, we'll talk about what is offered through my office and through other offices for our new hires, our returning teachers, and our administrators that are in the building serving as principals. Early release time that was built into the calendar this year is new and exciting. It looks much different how that's being utilized in our elementary schools versus our secondary schools. So I separated those topics out, and we have ample time for questions and answers at the end. So what you're looking at right now is a slide that should be familiar to all of you. Maybe not our newest board members, but the instructional framework going back is something that a group of administrators and teacher leaders from Rapid City area schools created years ago. The instructional framework was to create an equitable and accessible learning experience for students and coherence throughout our system so that teachers and leaders had a shared understanding of the teaching and learning practices and professional expectations of our district. You'll see that there's a link to the framework in this presentation. I know you receive as a board member just the PDF, but I will follow up my presentation with sending you the actual PowerPoint file, excuse me, so that you can check the links out yourself and do a little deeper digging. Wow. Started with hullabaloo and it hasn't stopped. Let's talk about professional development.
Hi, I'm Nicole Keegan, the Staff Development Manager for Rapid City Schools. So we start off our August with 4.5 days with our new teachers. And this kind of just gives you an outline of all of the trainings that we go through with them. We want to make sure that those teaching experiences are very specific to the position that they have, and they're not going to trainings that they do not need or are not relevant to them. As you look at this list of trainings, they're not just trainings from our office, they're also trainings from special services, from Title VI, from federal programs, from educational services, special services. So we have this whole gamut that we kind of put together. And so we kind of just manage and organize it all so that we make sure that those trainings are appropriate for what they're doing. So as you look at this list, I will talk about some of the specific ones that maybe the non-educator may not understand. The first one that I want to talk about is the LMS introduction. And LMS is our learning management system in our school district. That is Google Classroom, or at the high school and at East Middle School is Canvas. And so those are the online portals that our students go into to access their learning and content with their teachers. That is not to say that they do not get paper handouts still, but it's just how to manage that system. We also have another one of Well-Rounded Schools. This was run by our our federal programs department and a little bit of Title VI, but that was kind of the introduction of how we support our students in a Tier 1 instruction for emotional support, and how we also use our Title IV funds within our school district. So our teachers are all aware of where that money is going to. And it also included our Handle with Care protocol with local law enforcement and service providers for our students. Aristotle is the platform that our teachers can use to view what their students are seeing on their machines. It also helps them pull up web browsing history. So we offer a training on how to use that service or how to use that platform. Chromebooks. If you've ever used a Chromebook, it's not like an everyday computer. And so if you're a teacher coming in and having any access to a Chromebook previously, we offer, it's just a 1-hour training about here's where the power button is. Here's where the audio port is. If your kids are having troubles, and kind of some troubleshooting things, because we recognize our teachers are our first line of tech support. And so trying to offer them some support so that they can feel empowered in that work is also awesome. We also have for our K-8 teachers, conscious discipline training. which right now we're so deep in that adoption process that each building has a definite different approach. And so we have offered this year 3 different options for the new teachers coming into the district of how they can do that learning, and it was determined by their building administration. So it could be either one of the 2 book studies or some online learning. So that kind of goes over the ones that may not be really obvious. Do you have any questions about any of those listed there for our new hire trainings? Yeah, Christine.
So I should know that the tier 1, I need what?
Classroom instruction, our regular classroom instruction that every kid gets.
And then deep in the conscious discipline. Oh, I'm sorry, you explained that. The learning. What was I gonna ask? No, I went down this conscious discipline thing and forgot what I was gonna ask before because I should be taking better notes.
That's okay. If you think of it,
Mhm.
we'll still be here. We're not going anywhere for a little while. Okay, so once we've completed 4.5 days with our new teachers, at the beginning of the year, we still have a half-day evening with them. And that's when we can do our online, or excuse me, our face-to-face ALICE training with them. And that's where we run through the protocols and why our ALICE, our use of ALICE protocol is better than what I grew up with, which would be kind of like huddle in the corner and lockdown. So we go over that with our new staff for safety and security of our students. Then we move into all of our certified staff come back and we have 4 days of PD before school starts with them. And then they have 1 teacher workday. So for that start of school year, we had building level trainings. So it's a list of trainings that are conducted at the building level. And one of them I really want to talk about is QPR training, because that is a mandatory training for all of our teachers to have to maintain their certification. So every 5 years, they have to have that training. Our school district has set the precedent that we offer that training every 2 years for our returning staff members and on the alternating years when new staff come in. So if it's this year, all of our staff got it. Next year, just new staff will get it. And that continues to alternate just so that we can maintain that level of awareness for our students. That's kind of within our, and Sarah Zimmerman, our prevention specialist, does that training for us. We also have like medication and AED trainings, which happen with our nurses in the building level. So there's a lot of coordination at the building level that happens. We also have special services, has an entire day of training with all of our special services staff. This year, we had a new math resource. So we had a day of training with for the elementary math resource. We've added the 2nd grade MAP assessment. So we had a half-day training for all of our 2nd grade teachers to add that in so they know how to give that assessment and understand the reporting that comes with it. And then we kind of just have this general that we continue to always have on our professional development days. Our high school teachers, we have CTE and AP teachers that we pull together, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit. But also like all of our teachers updating their syllabus annually and pacing guide updates and Edgenuity training, which is our online platform for credit recovery and for the virtual high school. We also, of course, have a half day of open house night. We also have a district opener. That is a jam-packed 5 days. Then we have during the school year, we have 3 days of PD with all of our staff. So we work really hard to make our district level trainings only the morning, and that leaves the afternoon for our building to do trainings that are specific to their school improvement plan and goals. This is just kind of a brief list of the trainings that we are offering during those October, January, or March professional development days. Do you have any questions about those? Yes, Mr. Swan.
I apologize for my late entrance, President Carr. I was at another meeting and we needed a quorum for that for the city commission. So I would like to ask a question about the Lakota language and the K-12 alignment. What are we aligning to there? Is that the what are we aligning to?
Okay, so that I can speak to that one specifically. Our Title VI department may be able to speak more to it, but I can tell you what we've gone with. So when we right now have the early release PLCs on Fridays at the first Friday of every month, the Lakota language teachers at the elementary level get together. The Lakota language teacher at the high school meets with the foreign language teachers at the high school. So he's aligning to the high school standards. Then when we look at on these PD days, they have half of a day to come together to talk about like, what does it look like when we teach an intro Lakota learner at elementary school? What are we teaching them at the high school? They kind of create some understanding of what we're going to be doing across the board. I don't know specifically beyond that. I know that they work with Marie Hyber, and the Title VI director to plan that time out. That's why they've consistently had it, because it is a K-12 subject so that they can have some consistency.
Okay, is there a kind of a second question to follow up? Is there a specific curriculum we're using or a orthography or a language for that?
There is not a specific curriculum. I can speak to this because when 2 Title VI managers ago, we looked at different products that have come out of our local reservations that have, curriculums that they have compiled and are willing to share or share for a cost. That was not the decision of the committee. And of course, the Ochetti Shakoween Essential Understandings were at the front of everybody's minds. So we started from scratch with no purchased materials and built what we have. And they had a lot of release time to build what they have. At our secondary level, we adopted world language materials just 3 years ago. And at the time, the instructor at Central High School for Lakota language, because it only runs at Central High School, was given the opportunity to review and select additional materials should he choose to. He's the expert. And so he and I just had personal conversations regarding that. There was no request for materials at the time. They went ahead with what they have.
One last, in regards to the Lakota language. At some particular point, we kind of, and this is 20 years ago, I guess, is that we have some particular points where you're learning colors, numbers, and animals. And then if you move along the line, it's still colors, animals, is there a point, or do we see anything within the future of this Lakota language PD where we can actually get something where, we're not just learning numbers here, in the elementary, numbers in the middle school and numbers in the high school, is there a point where we can learn, actual we can start-
Conversational dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's
so,
what I'm-
and I know that's been a work in progress. We don't just offer Lakota language at the high school. We offer Lakota 1, 2, 3. You would assume that progression is there as well. I can't get too detailed with their pacing guide work for what they teach it when, and what the standards are for students, because I'm not familiar with them, but I would certainly value a time to sit down and talk with you about this with our Title VI director and our Lakota language staff, because I think it's a very valid question.
And we've just hired a Title VI, is that correct?
Yes,
And we're moving along those lines. Okay, thank you.
of course.
Question, Nicole.
Go ahead.
What is QPR?
QPR, I don't know what the actual acronym stands for, but it's our suicide prevention and awareness training. Yes,
I know 2 of them. I know
pardon?
it's question and report. I forget what P is. Probe? It's a process.
Yes,
Yeah. Question. Do more, find more. I think it's probe. I think it's
Yeah.
probe and then report.
it's when we created that plan for our prevention specialist, that was the protocol that we determined would be the best for our school district. And is recognized by the state also for our teacher certification necessity. So. Question, persuade, refer. So new this year to our calendar are these 2 floating PD days. So our professional development days are 7 hours. And so historically, all of our staff every year have to do our online ALICE training, which is an hour, seclusion and restraint training, which is going over what the policy means, and then also signing off on the policy, and then our safe school trainings, which range from bloodborne pathogens to workplace bullying, ethics in the workplace. So all of our staff can do these trainings annually. Our classified staff do these trainings on the clock. So during their duty day, during their work day. Our certified staff have a little bit more flexibility, and a lot of them were doing this before even coming into their contractual time for the district. So it was just done and they could check it off. The part that I like about these floating PD days, it is recognizing that a lot of our teachers do these trainings outside of their regular workday because it is just, there's some convenience factor to it. And it's also, they have a lot going on in the day. So those are just kind of a list of some of the trainings that we have for our November 20th floating PD day. We are currently working on our December 18th floating PD day. But it's, yeah, we're really just recognizing the additional time that teachers would normally put in outside of their contractual day. So that's the part that I really am excited about. I've had a lot of teachers reach out and they were like, this is awesome. Thank you so much. I'm like, well, I really didn't do it, but you're welcome. So it was the other Nicole. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So they have to complete all of those before the floating day.
I
And
have
then
a-
you'll have another slate to be completed before the next floating. day.
Yes,
And can they choose to come in on that floating day?
yes.
Or can they say, I'm gonna stay home on that floating day and do them at home? No. Okay,
It is a work day, and so they do report to work. So right now I have this fantastic spreadsheet. As they complete the PD days, as they complete all of their required trainings, it sends them out a certificate that says, congratulations, you've completed all of the trainings and you don't need to report to work on the 20th. So, because a lot of them, that creates a little bit of anxiety. So this way they just know for sure.
Okay, so we talked about professional development for new teachers, for returning teachers. I'm going to speak just briefly about administratively what our options are. When Mr. Talley came into the assistant superintendent role a year ago, one of the common threads he was hearing with our administrators is, what about us? As far as professional learning, we have all kinds of opportunities to learn aside our teachers on best instructional practices or how to implement program X, Y, or Z. But we don't have anything focused on just leadership, and that is probably true. It's been a number of years. And so one of the ways that we're trying to remediate that is work that began last year and continues now. That's with ICLE on their leadership coaching. So what's entailed in that is monthly coaching sessions that are an hour apiece, monthly trainings on the Bob Daggett framework of rigor, relevance, and learner engagement. And then it concluded, well, last year with the model schools that I'm sure Superintendent Swiggert's already spoken to you about. So that's the work that the principals are involved in, but I want to explain a little bit more about the coaching sessions. Each principal identified their own personal action item that they wanted to dig deeper into. They felt like it was an area of growth, potential growth for themselves. And then the district defined a leadership action that we wanted everybody to work on. And it was an action that warranted everybody working on it. My next slide will show you all of those actions. But what I really like about this is you can take a seasoned administrator that's been here 20 years like Shannon Schaefer's, or you can take a new principal like Abby Karn that just joined our system. She's been a principal elsewhere, but not in Rapid City Schools. And you can find a perfect fit for them. So when Abby transitioned into the system, she picked her own leadership action. So it's really, you get to pick, it's goal oriented and you drive the bus on this. So it's very interesting. I have, there are 13 actions in ICLE's strategic leadership actions. 5 are related to the organization itself, more managerial, and the remaining 8 are all instructional systems. And so I'll show that to you right now and come back. Action 11, which you will see in front of you, is in the greenish color, 3rd column. This was the one that the district selected for all our administrators. This is work that we wanted everyone committed to. We wanted to deepen the knowledge of rigorous and relevant instruction that impacts positive student learning outcomes. That's a gimme. Everybody should be focusing on that every year that they're an educator. But then when you look at our principals themselves, let's see, I thought I took a note on this. I have 4 principals that are spending their time in action 6. And I have 7 principals that are putting themselves to work in action 10. So it was self-choice. Mr. Strausser and I maintain a list of what the principals are working on and can talk to that in our conversations with them as part of their evaluation and any other way that we want to use it. So I think that's been very valuable work because of the differentiation. But the monthly trainings that's associated, that is one size fits all. That is content that all the principals come together around. We have a learning day and then, you know, the ICLE trainer leaves. And we continue to work on our learning throughout the remaining time till next month.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So not to pile on, because as I think it in my head, it feels like piling on. But is there, I just know we've seen like our administrators, typically administrators, a lot of times are later in their career. So then administrators retire and then we need more administrators. So is there any opportunity, are there any opportunities for like our staff that's working toward administrators degrees to do leadership education? I just think of like kind of raising our own, and if are we looking at that or?
Certainly, there was a while ago, I'm just trying to think, 3 years ago, we had a leadership academy that people could apply to that were aspiring administrators, and they could attend the meetings throughout the course of the year. And it's just support to potentially be in a lead position. It was no guarantee of a lead position. We haven't had that in place for a number of years, but I know it's been discussed frequently. I think that a lot of our aspiring administrators are local and they have done their internships with our own building principals. And so they've created relationships where they do continue learning. They are given future opportunities for running IEP meeting or for attending and supervising a activity after school and so on. So I think that the learning's still going on. It just looks different than that focus time that we had in the past. Another pipeline I would say is just that the traditional AP to principal pipeline in our secondary schools. And that's typically where people start out. It's not often that people come into a lead principal role without having served in that assistant principal role, which is, or a dean. Yeah. So there are options for moving up without moving to the top immediately.
Also, this year, the state of South Dakota's Department of Ed does have a leadership opportunity for teachers to go into. I will say this, choosing to go into administration requires a degree in that, and we all know that education is expensive. So people have to determine oftentimes that they want to spend the money to have the opportunity to possibly move into administration. And I think many educators, myself included, often take a master's in something else and then decide, okay, I will add on administration. And so luckily the state of South Dakota has that option as well for alternative certification. So I think that the Department of Education is really stepping up in recognizing that need in our state. So I'm thankful for that. I also know that our administrators I've never heard of an administrator turning down somebody who wants to intern with them or do hours as they pursue a degree in administration. And so we do have that in our district that I think is very positive. And I know that any of us who with a certification would be happy to talk to anybody who's interested. And so if anybody's listening to this who is interested, reach out. We will talk to you or we'll put you in touch with somebody who can answer your questions.
Thank you for that, Principal Swaggart. Sorry, I'm not very good at looking across the room.
Hold on just a second. Just for procedurally, those of you that want to comment, if you can just raise your hand on your Zoom device, and then I can call on you that way. That way we can keep things in order. Thank you so much. The chair recognizes.
Thank you. One question I'd like to ask is that I've attended the Model Schools Conference for, I probably have 4 or 5 under my belt. And one of the things that, really, I think that the board had modeled earlier this year was that we get a chance to share out what our learning was. Is there an opportunity for the administrators to share out their learning at the conference? Or I don't know what we do at the training when we come back.
Yeah, so we built that into the time that we were there. We had nearly all building principal, lead principals participating in this work. And so we started every day with the debrief activities where we could come together, say, what did you go to and what is our takeaway? We combined all the resources that we had to include the slideshows and any other associated documents from each of the workshops and put them into a repository so everyone had access to it. And then I would just say that the principals have continued to connect. If there was a powerful session that we heard about in that morning, but you know, I learned about it now. I didn't actually go to that session. They're building connections between themselves and getting ideas from each other, from the one that attended and the one that wasn't able to attend. So there's more than you can go to or do at a model schools conference, as you know. So we really tried to be cognizant of that. We didn't have anybody to bring it all back and present to, but they did present to each other each day as part of the time. We just required additional hours of them while they were there.
I would also say that they have done a really nice job since we returned at communicating with each other about things they have used in the professional development time with staff at the beginning of the year, and communicated to everybody who went, hey, I did this, it went great. I rolled this out. Here I'm sharing what we did. And in fact, part of my district opener was something I took away from the model schools. And we had actually talked to one of our debrief about who was going to get to use that. And I called dibs on it and I used it. So they were all kind and let me do that. But one of the things that we want to do in all training that we send teachers to now is include that debrief, that time where they have to think about and communicate what they are learning. And I know that years past, that was a very structured, you had to come back and present at a staff meeting or something, and we kind of got away from that, but we're moving back into that, having a very structured format when people are at conferences and once they return about what they learned.
Thank you again, Superintendent Swaggart.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
2 questions. Do you know of any district staff that are taking part in the state administrative leadership program?
I can reach out to Dr. Graves and find out. They haven't shared that list out yet, but they really are pushing that leadership. So I will find out.
And then
We don't receive, just for your record, on trainings offered by the state, like I've been pushing the literacy opportunities offered by the Department of Ed this year. We don't get communication back on who from our system is attending. That would be something that we know only because they told us.
Oh, okay.
And so it's the same with teachers or administrators. They don't tell us, hey, Rapid City, here's who's involved from your district.
Yeah, okay. Just so I'm clear, because I haven't heard it, is ICLE is a consulting company or
It is a consulting company.
Okay.
It's a faction of HMH, Houghton Mifflin,
okay,
Harcourt, and they are going under a name change that I can't articulate right now. So I'm looking at Nicole. Yeah, I think they're going to rebrand themselves as Model Schools. But-
HMHs?
Well, ICLE is, yes.
Oh. okay.
So I know that they're branding right now. You're going to see a different name in the near future, but our work with ICLE has spanned years.
Okay, so ICLE puts on the Model Schools Conference.
Yes,
Got it. Okay, I did not.
that
know
was part of the
connection.
package that we purchased for our building administrators, because that's a great conference, great learning opportunities.
Okay.
And we thought it was really powerful to have each other there at the same time, so we could toss ideas to each other.
So is this monthly coach, is this ongoing, monthly
Mhm.
hour-long coaching?
Yep,
session?
the work began last fall, and it continues through January of this year.
And then will all the principals attend model schools every year?
They paid for our participation in model schools last year.
And probably not this year. then.
They didn't offer to pay for it. There have been years that we've directed Title IIA funds to make that available to all the principals that want to attend, but as far as I can recall, this is the first time that we got, everybody's invited, please come.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate
The
it.
other trainings that I just wanted to talk about briefly was for Reveal, our administrator training. Reveal is our new instructional material for math. If you're on the board last year, you heard more than enough about Reveal. I look at Dr. Bauer over here. But we do have administrative training. Starting out, it's going to be a sit and get situation for our principals. What can they monitor in Reveal? What reports can they receive from Reveal? How can they monitor the implementation in their own buildings? That's part one of the training that we're offering on
October 24th and 25th.
on October 24th and 5th. Then we move on to classroom observations, and those are facilitated classroom observations, which would have a debrief right after them as well to say, what did you notice? What is being implemented? What's not being implemented? Are we staying in line with the rigor of the content and the expectations, et cetera? So our first legitimate administrator training is coming up here, October 24th and 25th. Finally, the other PD that I would say, it's weird to call it PD, but it's really strong PD. If you talk to any of our building administrators, you know, our whole data retreat school improvement process in June, and then in August, we pulled together all the data that we've collected the year prior. We set some goals and we plan for how we're going to monitor the progression of those goals. And we talk about how we're going to support professional learning in our buildings to reach those goals. That's always been the model for as long as I've been in this office. We just keep getting better at it. And so last year, for the first time, our consultant, Lisa Pianowski, has worked with our building administrators to start a process of monitoring meetings. So it's all great to say, here's my plan, here's how I am going to monitor, but then you go on your merry way and school's busy and life is hard and you just don't get back to that. And so we are scheduling 3 times a year where we come together as a group and discuss that with the principals, and hopefully they've discussed it with their own leadership teams. Okay, we did implement these 3 strategies, but we haven't implemented these 2 yet. Are we going to, or are we going to take them out of the plan? You know, it's that time to sit down and say, here's what we said we were going to do. Here's what we're actually doing. And now what are we going to do? So that's really powerful learning, and it's real. And so very excited to be in year 2 of that for our administrators as well. I had mentioned that I had all of the action items. This is going to be available to you when I send you the slideshow, if you're curious about what a principal might be focusing on with their leadership coach, Len Leday. Give me one more. This me?
That's me.
Okay.
So we also have within our office, we offer courses for our teachers for credit or for contact hours, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but we offer, these are for teachers or anyone within the community. For instance, I have friends in the community that have a teaching license that are not teachers. And they actually use classes within from our school district in order to keep their teaching license current. So you do not have to be a South or a Rapid City Area Schools employee specifically to take these courses. We do offer, though, for this first one, the South Dakota Native American Studies course, we open that up first to our staff. So I want to talk about that specific course because it is a required course for any of our teachers coming to South Dakota without a South Dakota teaching degree or a previous teaching license. So someone coming from Wyoming would need to take South Dakota Native American Studies. We currently offer that course through Oglala Lakota College for 3 credits. That course costs our participants only like $250 to take versus taking it through BH is over $1,000. So offering them through our department offers a significant cost decrease for our staff and anyone interested. So that's why we open it up to just our employees at first, because it's highly needed. We also have another example is hacking assessment. This is a course that's really aligned to some of the looking at grading practices within the high schools. We have best practices in writing instruction. This is a course that we're offering for 1 credit that it focuses specifically on writing within elementary schools. And then I love this one because experimental learning with ORF is a very specific music teacher training. And we have music teachers from all over the hills that attend these trainings because it's so specific. They're hard to find trainings for just music teachers. So I kind of just gave you some example courses that we run. Those courses that are a credit through Augustana cost our teachers $95 for 1 credit, which if you have kids in college, you know is really cheap. So something to kind of bring it all back to our instructional framework. We use this framework within all of our PD that we offer. And so when we created this presentation, we're like, we got to put the instructional framework in because that's what we do. We embed this within all of our learning of what aspects of the framework that we are talking about and instructing on in all of the PD we offer for our new teachers, our current teachers, and then anything that we do even within our courses that are run through our department. We also include them, I'm sorry, it's not something that's just really important about this. I have like super core beliefs in education. And it is something that we believe in so strongly of what we expect for all students. And so that is why we continue to touch back on it, to try to spread that out to other teachers within our school district and awareness about it.
So to talk to you about early release, Dr. Bauer will present on what's happening with our elementary schools, and I will give you a better overview or another overview of what our secondary schools are doing.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk to you again about math. Glad to be back and sharing where we're at in the first year of our implementation with the Reveal Math resource that we have adopted for our K-5 elementary classrooms. If you were with us on our journey last year, you know that our work started with forming a purpose statement that guided all of our work that we did throughout the year last year, but it is continuing to guide the work this year. A key piece of that purpose statement was related to professional learning and support for our educators to ensure a successful implementation moving forward. So going into this year, we were very thoughtful about what that professional learning piece should look like for our teachers to ensure they felt supported in using the new resource to instruct and be responsive to student needs in their classroom. So we launched this year with our implementation training on August 16th. That was attended by all of our K-5 classroom teachers, our elementary administrators, SPED teachers at the elementary level, and even some of our interventionists and literacy specialists who didn't have other trainings to attend came as well to that training. So it was very large. Many people were there. The morning sessions were facilitated by specialists from McGraw-Hill, experts in the resource. They showed the teachers how to navigate the teacher manuals, how to navigate the online platform, but also just day-to-day what a lesson implementation would look like in the classroom. So that was the morning session. And then the afternoon session was facilitated by leaders from our committee that are continuing on from the adoption last year, and we're transitioning that into an elementary leadership committee moving forward. And so the leaders at each grade level facilitated the afternoon portion where they dove into the first unit studies. So teachers got a chance to dive in and really study units 1 and 2 of the resource to prepare them for day 1 when their students arrived to the classroom. So a little bit of background about those 2 units in particular. Unit 1 across the board for Reveal Math is the same concept in grades K through 6. It is not a unit that goes deep into mathematical content. Rather, it's a unit that builds the culture of a mathematics community in your classroom. So it really helps teachers help familiarize students with how do we talk about mathematics? How do we agree with each other or disagree with each other? How do we model it? What tools are available to us? And so the first 6 days, that first unit establishes that at every single grade level. So the unit study for that particular unit looked a little bit different. Every unit moving forward will go deeper into the mathematical content for their particular grade level. So our leadership team led them through unit 2 as well and walked them through kind of the components of what a unit study is. A little bit of background about why the unit study. Our committee that began the adoption process really voiced that we did unit studies many years ago for our previous resource, but many people found those very valuable, and that was voiced strongly by the committee. When you think about the unit study structure, it is not the intent of a unit study to really dig into every single lesson. Rather, it's to look at every unit as a whole. And so it does connect back to that PLC process that we're engaging in this year. Really, the intent is to provide teacher clarity. What are the essential standards that we will be teaching in this unit? What assessments are available to assess those standards? And what are the success criteria to show students have mastered those skills? And then also what differentiation opportunities are available to remediate or extend learning or continued practice for students as well. So that's the purpose of a unit study, is really to get an overall picture of every unit. So our teams walked through the unit 2. So grade level teachers out in the district would all be familiar with what that structure would look like moving forward. So then every month moving forward on those early release Fridays, teacher teams in their buildings will be engaging in that unit study. And they will study all of the remaining grade level units throughout the course of the school year. So we've mapped out what units they will be studying on each of those early release days so that they stay studying the unit ahead of when they will actually be teaching the unit in practice. We are also offering support from the Teaching, Learning, and Innovation Office. If administrators are requesting us to come to their building for that early release time, we are happy to come visit teams as needed. I know for our last early release, I went to 2 buildings. My colleague Tara Knowlton, she went to 2 buildings, and I know Valerie visited a couple as well. So we're available to step in as well. And we love to be part of that conversation because it helps us learn and support others throughout the district and connect teachers to each other who might be experiencing the same questions or needs as they're implementing this the first year. The bottom portion there details what's all included on the template of that unit study. Teams, as they go through, might move quicker or slower through different components of the template or find pieces of the template more valuable. But we wanted to create a common structure of what teachers would be engaging in during those early release days. Thank you. Another piece that we shared as part of that August 16th implementation training, and something we're continuing on with as the year progresses, are data packets. These are something that we created for our previous resource. And again, it was voiced that these would be valuable moving forward. So again, our leadership team, credit to them, they're taking on this work ahead of when teachers are implementing this. So what this looks like is on our district pacing guide, let's say you're teaching unit 3 in 4th grade. Our district pacing guide details what the essential standards are for that unit. So for every essential standard, there will be a data packet that looks like this, very simple in nature. It's just a quick table. So it details the standard, also the learning target that aligns to that standard. But the leadership committee is also detailing the success criteria. So what does that look like to meet expectations or be approaching expectations or exceeding expectations? So it kind of gives teachers that continuum for when they're evaluating student work. Where are my students and what are the next steps? The last part on the bottom there, you'll see our leadership teams have already dug into the unit ahead of time to pull resources from within Reveal that align to that standard that teachers can use to evaluate that particular standard. So teachers don't have to go searching for something to use out there, on the World Wide Web to find something that will fit that standard. Hopefully this is saving teachers time in selecting a common assessment to use to guide the PLC process, but also to guide their teaching in the unit. And I will say, as far as these data packets go, across the board, overwhelmingly, this is one of the pieces that we've heard the greatest positive feedback on with work that we did prior to implementation. Teachers have really voiced how grateful they are for these data packets to be created. So again, I just have to give huge credit to our leadership team and those 25 teachers, because they are doing an incredible amount of work to not only support their own students in their classroom, but students across the district in using the new resource to move their learning and their mathematical understandings forward. So huge shout out to our leadership team, because I get to be the face here tonight, but all credit goes to them and the work that they're doing.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks. Okay, so I have a couple questions because you're going on to secondary or really. So about elementary. So are there different activities for literacy specialists at the elementary level, PE teachers, or is this what everybody's doing?
So during that time, I can speak to part of it, at least. So classroom teachers are engaging in the unit studies. I can also speak toward the interventionists. one of the pieces with the interventionists over the past couple of years is that one of the struggles is maintaining the documentation for the students who are in the RTI process. And so the interventionists, per Dr. Hafer and her guidance and request last year was that we would move forward with dedicating the early release time for interventionists to make sure they are keeping up with that documentation side of the RTI process for those students, because that data trail is really important to make sure we are being responsive to student needs. So I can speak to those two parts.
And for the other contents that you find in an elementary school, we have people assisting with the teams that come together for that. So whether it's elementary PE, music, or library, or IMS as it's called in our elementary schools, they collaborate as well around their own essential learnings and standards.
Do they get together on these?
They do.
these days? So all the IMS teachers are together in one place.
And so we have a lead PE that oversees that. We have a lead music that sees over that. So yeah, they're doing work that's relevant to them.
Okay, I appreciate that. Then these data packets, you brought up a fourth grade one, are they all, they're every level? And they're on paper, or I mean, they're not linked to the math curriculum.
No, they're not linked out to the math resource. They all have the same template, same view. We house them on our SharePoint site for elementary mathematics. So every grade level has one document that houses all of the units. And then there's a table of contents page that will link them to that particular unit. And then in the formative assessment and summative assessment part, I know it's kind of hard to see up there, but it will detail what activity page or what assessment, the exact name, so they can go right to the resource and find it in the resource.
So they have the standard. And they say, I'm gonna work on this standard, and they're liking this because it has all the different lessons they can go directly to.
Yes, and not necessarily lessons, but a piece of evidence they can collect that would show student understanding of that particular standard.
So unit 3 is about addition and subtraction strategies. You know that entire unit's going to focus on that. But when it's time to stop and assess your students to determine where they are, this is just a way to say all the assessments for this live here. Pick one. And you can use it as a formative or a summative assessment. So it's just trying to, the books are big and cumbersome to walk through. So when I was at Pinedale or South Canyon last week, observing in their early release time, a lot of these first couple units is digging for resources. It's all right there, but you have to dig to find it. This is taking the digging out of it.
Oh, okay. Does Reveal assess students as they go on? I mean, so teachers have instant access to where their students are struggling.
And Reveal will tell a teacher, these are potential assessments you might want to use. It's always teacher discretion. So, but yes, they provide the assessments and they direct the teachers to the assessments. We're just trying to make it easy for them to find all the things.
Okay, thanks.
This might be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. But if Luis Ucero is here for his slides, he'd go long and deep on the secondary early release schedule, and you're not going to get that from me. Go Stevens Raiders in soccer, that's where he is. So our early release work for PLC at the secondary does look different. You've heard a lot about evidence-based grading from Luis and Mr. Talley and other administrators that have gone before. Our secondary early releases are really built around evidence-based grading and the PLC model. So what Luis told me to tell you on this slide is it's equity of opportunity for all students, and all their calendar work is to align resources for all contents across the district, and the pacing guides and essential learning intentions guarantee that this is not a lottery of opportunity or which teacher you happen to get, that it's consistent from classroom to classroom, from subject to subject throughout our secondary schools. Again, the intent of the work is to guarantee an equity of opportunity for all students. Luis would really want me to say on bullet 1, we're trying to build a process that creates a sustained change so that we can be student-centered. So basically, it's asking the question, how can we take this and be more student-centered? I would point out the fourth bullet, removing grading practices away from behavior, directing them towards learning. And that's a message that you heard in depth last year. If you want to know more or you're a new board member, I would suggest that you reach out to Luis directly. He has done all the work with Central over the years and with our other secondary schools as they pick up on this learning journey. And so we are in different places in our secondary schools. And Central did do an extended pilot of evidence-based grading, but that's not the case at Stevens. That's not the case at our middle schools. And so they're all in different stages of the work. I guess the common thread of the work is Luis and the building administrators. And they meet and plan routinely to make sure that we're on the right track towards our end goals.
Val?
Here's his why slide. Traditional grading practices in most schools are entirely inconsistent and incompatible with learning as the fundamental purpose of education. And as you have kids that have gone through our system, you might agree with that statement. And that's something that we're trying to remedy through the work that we're conducting in our secondary release time. And somebody said my name.
Yes, I had a question on the evidence-based grading.
Mhm.
You said that each of the secondary schools are at different levels, obviously Central and Stevens, and then the elementary schools, or the middle schools.
Mhm.
So is there a strategy to get everybody kind
To the
of-
same point, yes,
Yes.
there's actually a calendar that well outlines the baby steps we're taking to get us all on the same page.
Okay.
And if the board's interested in those documents, just give me a ring and I'm happy to share them.
Okay, but it is happening that
Mhm.
we're all gonna get on them. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
So we do all have the same goal. We're just in different
different-
steps getting
yes.
there.
Mhm.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Of course. That's my thank you slide. We said 17 or 20 minutes would be our presentation, and it's been an hour. I forget that we talked too much. So thank you. And since we did Q&A along, I would assume there's fewer questions, but I'm happy to stand for any other questions.
I think Mrs. Swigert, Superintendent Swigert, did you have your hand up?
I did, Bishop Carr. Thank you very much. I was just going to point out that on the secondary PLC, they are traveling to different buildings to meet in teams so that it is also across the district. It's not ours, but they worked very hard to set up which departments were we meeting at which buildings, and teachers traveled to those buildings to have those meetings on our first early release for PLC work that was cross-curricular across the district, which is incredibly important that we know at Stevens and Central what is happening. At the middle schools, they know what's going on. And that is the importance of having that early release time get out at about the same time across the entire district. And I know that parents, are very concerned that multiple buildings are releasing at the same time. And how do they get more than one place to pick up their children? But it is because if we stagger that exit too much, we can't get our teachers together to do the work. Because it's not just happening in that building. Stevens teachers are traveling to Central. Central teachers are traveling to Stevens. East teachers are traveling to South. It's happening all over. So that's why we need to have that very tight release time on early release days.
Thank you, Superintendent Swigert, for saying that. We really are keeping the work consistent. And yes, we do have a map, but it's a lot to detail in a presentation. So honestly, any information you want about that and what the end goals are, please just reach out to any member of Teaching, Learning and Innovation, myself preferably.
Okay, any other questions for team? Yeah, my team. All right, seeing none, I'd like to use one of my fancy motions and motion to have a 5-minute recess before we get into the human resource presentation. Do I have a second? Well, you can. I can do that too, but let me use my fancy procedures. All right, all in favor, aye. All
Aye.
opposed, same sign. All right, 5 minutes, so it's 34, so 5 minutes. All right, let's take 5 minutes. Thank you. Item 6, Bravo, Human Resource Presentation. Chair recognizes Director Manuel.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight, President Carr and board members. I'll try to stay under 17 minutes. So the first item that I wanted to talk about this evening was teacher retention. I know that that has been a topic of discussion at some prior board meetings. And what I would like to do this evening is really try to have more of conversation than me putting a lecture forward. I'm going to hit on some points, but hopefully they'll be able to inspire some conversation. A couple of things that I thought about with teacher retention was, what are our challenges? What is challenging us to keep teachers? And I came up with a few items. One is career path. There isn't necessarily a whole lot of opportunity for those teachers who are aspiring to be administrators to promote up, unless you have retirement in those upper level positions. So sometimes I think teachers feel like, okay, if I'm going to get that opportunity, I'm going to need to go somewhere else that maybe there's going to be more opportunity for that. I also think that sometimes compensation limitations, people decide they want to go find more money, and the district may not be in a position to be able to do that for whatever reason. And so I think another reason for people leaving is the fact that they are trying to find a better paying position. It's not to say that our positions are not well paying, but they may have a belief that they could do better in other school districts. And then finally, performance financial recognition. And what I mean by that is coming from the for-profit world, typically an individual's compensation is tied to their job performance and through their job evaluations. In our situation, the pay increases are across the board through the negotiated agreement. And so sometimes you may have teachers who feel like they are working very hard and that they are putting forth a lot of effort. They're showing good results, but their increase in compensation is somewhat stymied by the negotiated agreement amount, and may be essentially the same as somebody who may not be quite performing as well. And so again, they may feel that, well, you know what, I feel like I want to be recognized for my performance, and that may drive them to leave teaching altogether and try to enter into the private sector where they feel that their work can be recognized through higher compensation. Some of our opportunities to keep teachers, again, something that's been discussed recently in the board meetings are stay interviews, and also what we would call a return interview. And I'm going to talk about the stay interviews first. There are several different ways you can do stay interviews. The first is where the individual that you are wanting to speak to, that conversation is had between them and their direct supervisor. It can be a very candid conversation with the supervisor talking with their subordinate, saying, what is it that we can do better that would make you want to stay and not leave? Not suggesting that you're wanting to leave, but what is it that we can do to make this opportunity for you more rewarding, more challenging, what have you? Another way to do a stay interview is to do it with a neutral third party, somebody say from human resources that sits down and says maybe, hey, let's talk about, what your goals are, what your plans are, and what is it that we can do as a district to assure that you're not going to want to leave us? What is it that maybe we're missing? Maybe tell us about something that you desire to achieve that maybe we're not recognizing and offering out in front of you. The third way to do a stay interview would be through a an anonymous survey. And I would suggest if that is going to be one of the options we want to explore, you're going to have, to some extent, a level of some people not thinking that it's anonymous, and so they may not be honest with you, and so you may not get the information that you're really wanting and desiring. On the other hand, at the other end of that spectrum, you may hear things that you really don't want to hear, and it is going to be a difficult challenge to figure out, is this somebody who is truly trying to explain something that is really driving them to want to leave, or is this somebody who's just grousing and just complaining for the sake of grousing? So it's important to recognize those different options and understanding what it is at the end that you want to accomplish. Return interviews would be, for example, I think we recently had a couple of individuals who left the district who came back. That raises the question, well, why did you come back? What was it that you had here that you thought you could find better somewhere else, but then realized you couldn't, and then you came back? Return interviews can be very powerful because those can be testaments to what the district is offering to staff, and being able to emphasize that to current staff, because I think we may or may not have ever had a chance in our life to go somewhere and think the grass is greener on the other side, and it doesn't turn out that way. But utilizing a return interview gives you some very good insight as to what the district is perhaps offering that it's not emphasizing enough to the current staff. The second one would be to emphasize total compensation. Again, in my experience in the profit world, one of the things that organizations will do is we don't just focus on how much your annual salary is. We talk also about how much the organization is paying for your medical benefits, how much the organization is paying for the life insurance for you and for your dependents, how much the organization is putting towards your retirement, how much the organization is paying for your taxes. Yes, as an employee, you have taxes taken out of your paycheck, but the district also pays a portion of those taxes. Individuals who leave to go to be a consultant find out very quickly that, oh, you mean now that I'm not paying 6.7% whatever for FICA, I'm paying double that because I have to pay the employer portion and the employee portion. So emphasizing all those types of things, I think, really does help people understand. You can take that even a step further by demonstrating, say, for example, with the medical benefits, not only the contribution amount that they make, but the plan design itself. For example, you have a plan that has a $1,500 deductible. That's getting you to your co-insurance a lot quicker than, say, a plan that has a $5,000 deductible. So we're saving you money there in that respect. So I think taking all of those things and packaging them up and being able to communicate them with staff also will help give them an appreciation. And then finally, provide guidance both at the district level, the building level, because everybody is going to want to have some guidance at one time or another. And we need to be able to really, as leaders, step up and provide that guidance, especially if those people are starving for it and really, really desire it. As Valerie spoke to with the, I believe, the administrators, I believe your phrase was, well, what about us? I think, that is a fantastic step for us to take to develop them in that respect. And so those are types of things that I think we want to focus on to try to retain staff, not only teachers, but I focused on teachers simply because, quite frankly, that's been the hot button, and not only for Rapid City area schools, but for all schools. So are there any questions or comments about those things?
Put your hand up. The chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks. So these challenges, the 4 that you listed, where'd you come up with those?
Actually, I drew partially from my own past experience in the for-profit world, because those are not just unique to education, they're also common in the for-profit world. But if you do look at in the education system, it is not designed the same as the for-profit world with career paths and succession planning necessarily the way that you see it in the for-profit world.
Right, I think I would argue that why are we losing teachers is probably pretty different to why are we losing a banker, like, oh, because they wanted to go into real estate or I mean, it is a very unique profession. And so I guess I don't see anything there about exit interviews. I don't understand how we solve the problem of why we're losing teachers unless we ask the teachers that we're losing why they're leaving. Has that ever been done?
And that's a very, very good question. And exit interviews can be effective if you can get ahead of the curve. And what I mean by that is having those discussions with individuals before they leave the district, because once they exit the district, they're really not going to be interested in sitting down and talking to you about why it is that they left. You may get some that will, and that can still provide valuable information for us. But I think what we really should focus on with exit interviews, if that's what we want to glean information as to why people are leaving, we need to grab that before they leave, not once they're out the door.
Right, I could see I imagine that other school districts have modeled something that we could look at, but I could see it being very effective to a person turned in their resignation and immediately someone from HR says, can I grab you for an exit interview? And then if they say no, here's a survey that we have, if you'd like to do that, so to help us learn how to do our jobs better to retain people.
Sure.
I don't, if we don't do exit interviews, what we rely on is rumors or national surveys. And so if you look at national surveys of why teachers leave the profession, they say the #1 reason is their administrators, lack of administrative support. That's what I've heard from and read from multiple news sources. And if you ask rumors in Rapid City, they're going to tell you lack of administrative support, behaviors. They couldn't manage the classroom anymore. The profession's gotten too hard. I don't know what the real answer is, but I'd like to know for this district why they're leaving so that we can stop them.
And that's a really good point. And you bring up a very good point, and that is individuals typically do leave organizations because not of the organization itself, but of the leadership or the management that they're receiving. However, I think with teachers, with all of those things you just mentioned, I don't know if we can point out to specifically just one of them driving why they're leaving. It probably becomes a combination of those things, and then they finally get to that last straw of the item that makes them say, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. And whether that last straw is behavior of students or whatever it is, it becomes a collection of things and not maybe necessarily just one specific item. But you bring up a very good point that it would be helpful for us to deal in the facts of why people are leaving versus rumors or innuendo or speculation.
Or nationwide data that maybe isn't reflective of our district.
Okay, the chair recognizes Mr. Berkland.
Thank you. I just wanted to, on the challenges part there, I just wanted to talk about that performance financial recognition. And I certainly don't disagree with that at all. I just wanted to caution a little bit against like a merit pay type of thing. Just speaking from my own experience, I taught quote unquote the low classes. And so my students were not achieving as high. However, if we measure growth, they were growing. All the ones that failed last year, I still had a whole bunch fail, but they didn't fail this year. And then similarly, on the other end of that, person right next door teaching the advanced classes, may not have as much growth, but their kids are doing well. So just how we,
Right.
how we measure that becomes tough in there. And then under the opportunities, I just wanted to mention, I agree with the total compensation, but I think we do need to also be conscious of and grappling with the fact that some places are just better. And we need to kind of recognize that and be working towards sharing these things that I totally agree with are not well shared, but also recognizing that
Sure.
even if we do share those things, that we do have some work to go on.
Right.
On that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chair recognizes Superintendent Swaggart.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, but I do believe HR does send out exit surveys
They do.
and very seldom are they completed.
And returned.
So we do send them out after we get a resignation. They are emailed, they are asked to return them, and they are electing not to. I'm not saying that a personal reach out, to meet with a person, an individual or a phone call wouldn't possibly garner better results, but we do send out exit surveys. We do ask employees to complete them. Typically, they elect not to because they are leaving, and that's just what I've garnered from the results we've been getting, is they just don't turn them back in.
And that goes back to trying to conduct that stay interview. So you don't let people get to the point where they want to exit the organization, that you want to find out what is it that's making you want to leave so that we can keep you here. Because it could be a very simple thing, a simple fix for us to be able to keep somebody. And it's good to know that we could do that before they walk out the door and then tell you, yeah, all you needed to do was this, and we're not going to get them back.
All right, thank you. The chair recognizes Mr. Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Just one question. I saw something I guess I didn't see it in the challenges is, and people have been talking about it for years. I mean, they started talking about it when I was 40, but the graying of our profession, that we have a number of individuals that are nearing retirement, and we have less and less people entering the profession. And that's just one issue. I mean, because then it becomes back to a game of, whose district's better. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that I think we need to address. I mean, we really just is, how do we do this? You know what I mean? There's no magic. There's no one thing that's going to solve all of our problems. But do we have a systemic or something that's a system that's going to say, hey, can we address all these issues at once? Or is it just something we're going to have to live with? Is this the new norm? I don't know. I'm asking the professional.
Sure. No, and I certainly hope it's not the new norm. Now, I think it's also perhaps fair to say that education didn't get in a teacher shortage overnight, and it's not going to get solved overnight either. But you bring up a really good point, and that is your exit from the profession and the numbers is greater than what you have entering in. And that's going to be a tough balance to try to make up. And so then the question becomes, and we'll get to it in the next slide, what do we do creatively to recruit and attract people? Are we going to do things that other districts are not doing at all, or consider doing things that might seem a little bit out of the ordinary? I know there are some districts that do a 4-day work week. I don't know if that would be enough to entice people to want to come work for a 4-day work week versus a 5-day work week. I know that wreaks havoc on a calendar and number of days and everything. And I know I'm getting scowled at down there, but but yeah, I mean, and that's a great point too, because even though you may come up with some great out of the box ideas, it's also going to have potentially unintended consequences for community, families, or that type of thing as well. So even though we might think, hey, this is going to be a great idea, this will attract all kind of people, other community members may say that's not going to work for me. So, but you're right. I don't think there's one magical answer. If there was, and I had it, I would be more than happy to share it.
All
Say
right.
that again.
We all seem to be very welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
All right, the chair recognizes Mrs. Thomas.
To piggyback after that comment, it's not just the teaching profession that's getting to retirement age, it's the plumbers and the electricians and all of these different major professions. I know that there's an electric company town that is wanting to hire you for on-the-job training, pay to teach you to go to school, because they're not unions, but there's some of their kind of group trade grouping, yeah, that have come together trying to figure out how to recruit kids, students into wanting to do that. And I know that we have our career day where we have all the different professions come in and kids get to go to each of the doors. Is there one for teachers? Just I don't know if you get your most vibrant teacher out there to get those kids to come and look at that. I don't know if that's an idea as well, but it isn't just teachers. It's definitely, and a couple weeks ago, we talked about how we were going to go to automatic food or in cafeteria. So we're getting rid of, just even, are we going to go to robots for cleaning the floors? I mean, we kind of already do, and some, put it on a timer. They've got those at Sam's Club, we're kind of pushing people out by going technological. So why would students want to become teachers if that's going to end up being more of a technical job? Anyway, just thoughts.
I had a statement for, Superintendent Swaggart and Director Geary. When we talk about total compensation, I don't know if Mr. Sassy is on, but one of his things that just burns him is when people say, well, I can go to McDonald's and make 19 an hour, or go to Walmart and stock 19 an hour. And he just said, well, you don't think about the insurance, he's just wringing his hands. And so we've had those discussions. So will it get to a point, or can we get to a point where we actually say, this is the total compensation package for teacher, for janitor, and then see if it's competitive with other businesses. And, hopefully we'd like to think that it may be, but if it's not, then maybe it is true that I'd do better working at it.
One of the discussions we have in human resources when we hear that comment that, I could go to work at Common Sense for more money or what have you. Even just outside of the total compensation, you've got a whole new realm of other things you have to be faced with going into Common Sense. You may not work a Monday through Friday daylight schedule. You might be working 3 to 11 Friday through Tuesday. Is that worth making a few extra dollars per hour? For some people it may be, but for others, they don't want to do that. So, there's other factors that you also have to take into consideration whenever somebody does make that comment, because while they may be accurate in saying it is going to be more of a dollar per hour amount, again, they may not get benefits. They may not get 6% thrown towards a retirement plan or anything like that.
So that's what I'm saying, doing a better job of advertising that in a numerical form. So at least they will think about it, because then if we do it and say, well, this is your total compensation and blah, 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 then they can take that and compare it to another job, give them a tool to compare with another job. And maybe they'll say, oh, okay, well, now I see, I'm not going to do that. Right. Chair recognizes Ms. Superintendent Swag.
So a couple of things there, and we talked about this in the past, but our paychecks do a nice job of telling us what the district pays, what our benefits are, and what we pay. And as we have gotten more technologically advanced, and now those things are all filed for us and they don't mail it to our house, our check isn't attached to it, we don't do as great of a job of doing that. So I think that you make a very good point. I think that also because we work with students, because we care for children, we have hoops that people have to jump through to work for us that some people just are not willing to do. We have to have a background check. We have to be board approved. There's steps, whereas I can go to McDonald's, I can interview today, they'll hand me a shirt, I can work tomorrow. And Wendy's literally has on their signs, work today, get paid tomorrow. I mean, they'll, and that is not how we operate. So I think we are sometimes challenged by the ease at which people can job hop out in the public. Also, we tell the truth about what somebody's going to make, where you see up to $17 an hour at McDonald's, but you talk to somebody who goes and interviews and they start you at 9, up to is very different. You know, we could advertise, make up to $65,000 to be a teacher,
Maybe
but you know what reality is, you know, or however much, you know, make up to, you know, $100,000, whatever, to be an administrator. That's not how, we're very factual. We're very honest. You know, we publish our salary, our negotiated agreements. They can see where they can qualify. And I think sometimes doing it that way, we shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit. Not having, but I think we need to recognize that Coy and his team has worked with HR and they've sent out these QR codes that people can scan and fill out interests, and they've had quite a bit of interest. We've also taken a little bit of heat from employees because we sent them out to everybody who works in the district and they're like, why are you trying to hire me? I already work for you. But we were actually trying to get them to share that out with people they know to help fill out an interest, and then we'll contact you and we'll help you go through that process. I think some things are a little overwhelming when you look at working for a school district, and I'm glad they are, because we need to have the right people that are safe to be around children. And so we just take that as part of the lumps of the profession that we work in. We have to have the right people with kids.
And I think that's a great point to make. I don't know who all got the flyer of the job. I thought that was pretty smart. I didn't know that was being done, but I thought that was pretty smart just to shoot that out there and see what happens.
Boy wants to say
Oh, you got it. All right, Mr. Sassy. Can you hear me? The chair recognizes the great gentleman.
He needs to get off mute.
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm still learning Zoom after all this time, everybody. Yeah, so really great points, and just a couple of things I wanted to reinforce. I think Gary and Superintendent Swigert both did a nice job of talking about this, but there's so much complexity around the idea of explaining a compensation package. And I think there's this very natural and understandable tendency for people to get drawn into what's the wage amount, you know, what is the number in front of the dollar per hour, the total salary. And that's perfectly understandable. And so I think it becomes incredibly challenging for us to battle that and in a quick and efficient way, be able to explain what we mean when we say total compensation. And Gary and I and his crew have had a lot of conversations about that. Of course, it's something we talk about in negotiations, of helping folks understand what we mean when we say that. And then secondly, I wish I could take all the credit for the flyer with the QR code. I will give credit where credit is due. Krista Leichner had that as a brainchild, and we worked on that as a support service group with the other support service managers. To date, we've had about 25 people that have scanned that QR code and put their information in for us to contact regarding what type of job they're interested in, any questions they have. So it's really been incredibly valuable already. And I think there is interest out there. Again, like Gary said, sometimes it's just a matter of how we get out to those people and help them understand those things. So yeah, good stuff.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? All right, we're going to item.
He's not there.
Oh, I know I promised,
More.
I know I
Okay.
promised 17 minutes and I can see that's fading very fast here. So,
30, so.
okay, well, I'll try to speed it up a little bit. So the next topic we talked about a little bit, kind of a segue into, was recruiting. What I did here was just list all the various resources of places that we do advertise. And you can see through Associated School Board of South Dakota Association of College Career Centers, School Administrators of South Dakota for admin positions, Teaching South Dakota Education Employment System, South Dakota Department of Labor, Handshake, which is offered through all the universities, LinkedIn, Indeed, Quick Quarter newspaper, which focuses more on the support services, and our own website. So we are hitting a lot of various recruiting resources, but there's other ways that we can recruit as well. And again, some of those you can start thinking about getting outside of the box a little bit. Referral programs where I can refer somebody, and if they successfully complete a 6-month period, I get a bonus of X amount of dollars or something along those lines. And the individual also gets a bonus, so that they have a commitment to stay within the organization and receive that bonus as well. So, again, we're recruiting in a limited pool. We aren't the only school district here in the immediate area, and so we are competing against other districts as well. We need to find a way that's going to separate us in that recruiting battle that makes us an employer of choice for people to want to come and work here. And we've got to find something that is going to draw people in. And again, that may not just be one simple thing. It may be a combination of things.
Mrs. Superintendent Swigert.
I think one of the things we've brought up before in some board conversation is the state now allows districts to pay for advanced student teaching permits. We talked about that at the last board meeting, but we can also have paid student teaching internships, which many professions pay people to intern before they graduate from college. Teaching has always been you student teach, you pay the college to student teach, and you do it for free. But they have opened that up. So we have been talking internally about bringing a plan forward to offer student teachers to be paid to student teach with us. And then a referral program or a bonus if they apply and accept a job with us, things like that. We need to take forward. There's other recruiting things that are not included in here. We go to a lot of work fairs. Camille goes last summer, we had people manning tables at various events around the community. We do try to get the word out and do whatever we can. Anytime I get a job fair notification, I send it to HR, and most of the time Camille lets me know, oh, that's already scheduled. We're also looking at maybe adding a recruiter for the hourly and support staff positions. That is very different, because I think right now Camille has to wear 2 hats. So part of her job right now is to go out and find bus drivers and custodians and warehouse and everything, which is a different group of people that are going to be at different places. And then her other job is to find administrators and teachers and professionals, certified staff, psychologists, speech pathologists, OT, PT, nurses. And it's 2 different, very different positions. So we have talked about finding another recruiter position that is going to branch off and do the hourly work. We've heard that people are having success in finding bus drivers at churches and retirement communities, or the donut shop where they're playing cribbage in the morning and whatever. So we recognize that recruiting is going to be bigger. And I also want to mention that somebody, I think it was Christine, mentioned earlier that what are we doing to get, or maybe it was Kate, to get people interested in becoming a teacher? South Dakota Department of Ed has a group now that they're offering districts to be a part of, to recruit students into finding out what it's like to be a teacher. And you actually kind of form a club that is supported at your high school and give students the opportunity to visit elementary schools and middle schools and talk to teachers. And we definitely need to pursue that in Rapid City as well. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Stephens.
Yeah, I think that group is called Educators Rising, and I think right now they're just at Central, not at Stevens. So I just found on Brookings, the Brookings Institute, which is a nonpartisan nonprofit research institution, said that nationwide stress is almost twice as common a reason for leaving the teaching profession as insufficient pay. I just feel like we can talk about salaries and it's super important that we do an overall compensation package, but I think that the floating continuing ed, I always call it continuing ed because that's what I call it for myself, but the floating professional development days are a wonderful example of that and highly appreciated. And I just really think like we need to look very much educator specific. What is working around this country to retain educators? Not so much, how do you keep people happy in a job, just any job? That would be me as a board member, not speaking for the entire board. I would like to know specifically like data, why people are leaving, and then what actions we're taking to retain them.
Just a quick summary on onboarding. This past summer for the months of July and August, we had 4 sessions per week. One in the morning, one in the afternoon on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We had a total of 184 employees onboarded from July 1st through the end of August. And this year it is kind of a private joke in human resources, but we did not have a need for a special event onboarding this year. I'm assuming Superintendent Swigert can smile about that. The special event onboarding last year was a mass onboarding with, I can't even tell you how many people. I was one of them that literally came in this room and filled out the I-9 form, the W-4, the direct deposit form, got fingerprinted. It was, I will be honest, it was impressive that they were very, very well organized for the amount of people that came in here. And that was my first introduction to my group. And I thought to myself, okay, this is going to be okay because these guys got it together. They got this organized and they did a great job. I know they were a little nervous about doing it, but it ended up being a great thing. But we did kind of laugh and say, yeah, we didn't have to do the special event this year.
That was, remember, we did not have a director of HR. We were having a hard time a year ago with getting fingerprints scheduled with the sheriff's office and the PD, which is where people have to go. We were very concerned at the beginning of August that we were not going to have people cleared to teach. And so we brought in a fingerprinter and did it all. This year, we had lots of conversations after Gary was hired. We want to make sure that we were doing it as we went and not putting it off. It helps very much to have a more veteran HR staff as that have been with us. We have not had turnover in that department at all since Director Manuel came on. He's maintained all of his staff. So they are in another year of doing that work, and it really does matter. We talked a year ago about previously HR had fewer staff, but very veteran, years and years and years. And as those people left because their hair got gray or retired or whatever, we had to replace them with more people because we lost that knowledge. Well, when Gary came in to HR, everybody except Pat in the sub office had less than 6 months experience. So having that department had completely turned over, That August was really tough. But now everybody has 18 months or so experience, and we had a much better season for hiring. And it matters. It matters who's leading those departments and how things are working. Having the consistency of Gary being in that position and has really mattered. And I think that, you know, that's one thing that we should point out, as you pointed out earlier, Christine, that leadership matters. And if people are exiting, we need to find out why. Well, Gary's an example. Nobody has left his department since he came on. And we need to recognize that as well and celebrate that for our leaders.
Thank you. Just wanted to do a quick by the numbers. Total head count as of September 6th, 1,856. We have had 201 new hires as of 9/6, starting on July 1st. And we've had 99 terminations, resignations as of the end of August. To put that in perspective, total terminations and resignations for 22-23 was 382. And again, it's a goal, obviously, to try to reduce as many exits as possible. Another challenge that we are facing, ironically though, is we are getting more and more people who are made offers ghost us, meaning they go through the entire process, and when it's time for us to have them sign their contract or make their offer to have them come in to be onboarded, they don't respond. And we reach out to them via email, we call them, and there's really no answer other than maybe they took another job that was going to pay them more money, or they decided they just didn't want to do it, or what have you. And so, you know, that to me is a little bit concerning. I mean, we're getting people here, we got to get them in the door though. But that again is not uncommon either. I think there's, you know, ghosting is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with interviews. A lot of people will, yeah, schedule me for an interview, and then they never show up for an interview. So another challenge that we're going to need to address.
Chair recognizes Ms. Stephenson.
Is that included in that 99 number then, those people who ghosted?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that number, if we were to throw in the ghosting, it'll bump it up some. It's not going to double it or anything like that.
Is it typical to have a higher number of resignations and terminations in July and August?
I would say, I don't know if I would say it's common, but again, you're getting into a situation where people have signed their contracts. So if they decide to leave, they're going to have a breach. There are some people who are willing to do that because the breach is at its lowest amount at that point in time. So if they're going to make a choice to leave, they're going to do it in July because the breach is a $600 amount versus moving up to $800 after August 1st and then up to $1,200, I think at the beginning of October.
So I would also say that even though we've worked really hard to communicate with our staff about this, we have a lot of hourly employees, especially in the para group or the lunch services group, that they know they're not going to come back, but they will wait until August to resign because of the insurance. And although they've paid for that, correct, and we've worked on this, they've paid for the insurance. So we would like them to tell us sooner because it's been taken out of their check during the school year and they're covered until our insurance restarts on September 1st. But the mentality is they think if I tell them I'm quitting, my insurance, my benefits are going to quit and I'm not going to be covered. And it is something we're working on. I had paras do that to me. They would tell me they were going to resign, but I can't do anything. I can't fill out the resignation paperwork, the change of status until I have the letter or the email or something that makes it official. They would say to me when I was a principal, I'm not gonna come back next year. And I'd say, send me your resignation so I can take care of that. And they would sit on it until August because of that fear. Even if I talk to them, it's just this fear that something's gonna change and I'm not gonna have my insurance coverage. And what if something happens? So those are things that we often see in August. And if you look back at our resignations after August 1st, the number of last minute resignations in the groups of paras and food services was much higher. And that is the reasoning, and we just can't seem to overcome that.
That makes sense, and that's unfortunate. So it's not correct then to say in the last 2 months, we've had 99 and extrapolate forward to 1,200 this year?
No, no.
Okay. That's what I was worried about. Could we get could we get a year-to-year comparison mid-year? How many people versus 23, 24, 22,
Yes,
23?
I can get you that information.
Okay.
All right, the chair recognizes Mr. Berkeley.
Christina actually asked my same question, but you talking about insurance gave me a different question. That's just for hourly staff, the insurance thing? Our certified staff would end as soon as they quit.
We take payout for through their insurance is taken out of their paycheck, so it does impact them. But our hourly staff, we take it out in the 9-month contracts that they're paid, or the 9 month of work that they're paid. So it is a little bit different for teaching staff, although they're covered through June 30th for sure. And if they sign their contract, if they're continuing teachers, they get paid July 10th and July 25th and August 10th. And so there is the possibility that they will hold off. I'm not sure what the weight, if we tried to balance those out, what the breach is going to versus, and they have to pay back the pay that they didn't do the work. So paying back their salary plus the breach, they actually come out behind, I think, there. But it is very scary to be uninsured. Terrifying in this day and age.
I can play the Cobra game a little bit.
Yeah,
That's what
yes.
I did.
Yeah.
I had it filled out, but didn't turn it in. It's a whole nother thing, but yeah. So thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to get that out there. Appreciate it.
My last slide will be the PLMC, the Professional Labor Management Committee. We met with each of the groups in June. We created a working list of issues and topics to address. If you were involved in negotiations, you may recall that we moved a lot of different topics out of negotiations to the PLMC because they didn't really fall in under negotiations. And our next meetings are scheduled for the end of this month in September. So we're looking forward to getting back with them and discussing. So, and thank you for all of the discussion. Are there any other questions? I'm sorry I went over my 17 minutes. I think I did shorter than you though.
Chair recognizes Mrs. Stephenson.
Thanks. I just wanted to say thank you. 17 minutes is not enough to go over a subject as complicated as HR or the professional learning. And we joke about wanting to be done quick, but we also want to be well informed. So I appreciate all of your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, can I ask, where did the 17 minutes?
That's what I bet you.
Oh, that's what,
That was Valerie's self-imposed.
okay. All right, 'cause I didn't think I said it.
You're off.
Okay, so another rumor, right? It didn't come from us, so.
Didn't come from the board.
Yeah.
Little in-house bet.
Okay, the chair recognizes Ms. Baker.
Thank you. So I have a question for you on the PLMC. Is that going well? I mean, the stuff that we were talking about, is that stuff getting addressed? Are we gonna get to deal with it again?
So yes, in our meetings in June, those went really, really well. I was concerned only because we were butting up right against the end of the school year and nobody was going to even be interested in doing it. Those went really well. We hammered out. We basically went back to the negotiations list of everything that we pushed over and reaffirmed, we're still going to talk about all these things. We're going to still address all of these things. Everybody was in complete agreement. I thought, quite frankly, the mood was very good in all of those meetings. I thought that, I felt very comfortable that we will be very successful in being able to address all of those issues and get them taken care of. So that when we go into negotiations for the next year, We are going to focus simply on compensation and one other topic for each of the groups. So I think that the PLMC will play a pivotal role in making sure that a lot of those things that took up time in negotiations will not do so moving forward.
I was kind of afraid that maybe that might get shoved somewhere and not get taken care of. So,
Yeah, no,
okay,
we want to make
so
sure that we
glad
take
to
care
hear
of
that.
those.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item C, which will be 17 minutes. I put this, wanted to put this on the agenda just to give an update. I attended the AI workshop and I have an assistant with me. I did not tell them until just making that statement that they would be my assistant, but I had two, one left, Dr. Bauer left, she was also there, but we have Dr. Strasser here, so he was there. So if you want to have comments or input into what you learned during that day. So September 17th at the WDT Center, we had AI workshop. I had my first introduction to artificial intelligence at the Associated School Board of South Dakota. The main speaker talked about the subject, and so that's what intrigued me of wanting to attend this workshop to educate myself. And so I am definitely not going to try to explain artificial intelligence to you all tonight. That's not my goal. We will have successive study sessions where the professionals will come and talk to us about what it is. But what is important to me to address to the board, that it is one of our major functions of setting policy. And this is a hot button topic around the country, around the world. And so we would be wise in trying to get, well, I don't want to even say ahead, because we're really the technology is here. And it's moving at a pace where every 6 months, the new generation of AI, especially when you talk about ChatGPT, that's how fast the technology is. So by the time we have this discussion and by the time we come with the technology, it's going to be, even more advanced. So we really need to get on this subject and talk about how the district feels about the use of AI. One of the main things that I got out of the workshop is that we have to look at the subject of AI as using a tool and technology. And so in our discussions, you're going to get people that don't like it. You're going to get people that love it. And so how I describe it in my mind is just like a hammer. A hammer is for good. You can use nails, but you can also kill somebody with a hammer, right? So it depends on who's using the tool. And so I think if we focus on it as a tool, then we can try to wrap our minds around a policy to where we use it. Again, it's going to be a lot of discussion about how does the community feel about it, how do the teachers feel about it, how do principals feel about it. We have Director Seals. How does her department feel about it? How do students, how are they using it? Where they're already using it. Some teachers are already using it. And so again, it falls within our responsibility to start thinking about a policy. What does the board feel about it? And it doesn't have to be, even in my mind, it doesn't even have to be so detailed that it addresses every issue, but even the beginning of whether this board supports its use or not support. One of the interesting things, the New York district, at first, it was a little deceptive because at first they told us, well, not deceptive, but it was not updated. The New York school district at first banned the use of AI and ChatGPT for the whole district. But in reading about it, because I wanted to know why they have since realized that you can't ban it, and so have come to wisdom that they are now having discussions and having policies about how you're going to use it. And so I think that's probably put in our mindset, not whether we're going to use it or not, because you just can't avoid it. It's like telling people don't use cell phones. Go back to You all remember your finger would hurt, and then I would hate to miss a number. Oh, you're too young for that. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, we used to have to dial the number and yeah, it was horrible. It's like telling people, don't use a smartphone, go back to using the dial phone. Well, that ain't happening. So I think it's the same concept with AI. It's with us. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, your finger right here would get numb trying to go around. And so I think yeah, and so I don't think the thought is whether we're going to use it or not. I think the thought and the policy driving our discussion is how are we going to use it. There's a lot of morality issues around it. There's a lot of legal issues around it that we're going to have to draft. Shane even put in, we were sitting down there and they had some awesome workshops. You can tell it to do. I even had it write a sermon for me about the love of God, and I think I'm going to use it because it's pretty good. So Shane did. Shane asked it to write a policy about the use of AI, and it spit out a nice policy, and it actually was pretty good.
I just sent it to you.
Oh, okay, yeah, and we'll send it. So that's, I think, again, the discussion that we need to have with the community and with everybody involved. How are we going to use it, and what policies are we going to put together so that it's used for the good and not for the evil? So, Dr. Strasser, you have?
Thanks, President Carr. And I would echo a lot of your sentiments there. How we use it is what really matters. And you can say you're trying to get ahead of it, but you're not going to get ahead of it. Yeah. It's how do we help people bring the awareness and then start talking about what can we use it for in education, and how does it advance and create efficiencies that can help us work with kids. And sometimes I think when you look at like a ChatGPT and putting information into it and it can spit it out to you, you can't look at that and say, well, that's the finished product. That's when you start looking at it and say, well, how can I help kids understand this information then? So we've figured out this part. Now let's move to another level of learning on the higher order processes and be able to use that in different capacities. So I think there's some real positive potential for helping kids who are so used to just inputting things and getting a result and, oh, I'm done, to actually start utilizing that information in a different way. So that sticks out. I think the ethical dilemmas really stuck out for me at that workshop, and just understanding that what you put into it, it's using to create responses and get smarter. And we talked about a lot of different things, and like, well, if a parent sends me an email, can I put that email in there and ask it to write a response? And then of course you play around with it and say in a sarcastic tone or in a professional manner. And then you could see the differences on how it responds. And so, some of that was in fun, but you have to be careful because what's in that email that goes in, it creates the ethical dilemma. And we'll work through some of those situations, and we talked about writing lesson plans and how it can create some of that and align it to what you ask it to do. So there is some good value in there, but for being very intentional and cognizant about what you put into those types of AI pieces. So they talked about different models. ChatGPT is the most popular, and we talked about not being able to get ahead. I mean, 3.5 is the free version, 4.0 is the paid version. So I mean, they've got different capabilities and speeds already, and it's what you want for it. So yeah, I would go back to how will we use it, and I think that's super important as we move forward and craft policy and then move from there.
Yeah. The other exciting thing too is when we talk about teacher shortage, this AI can do a lot of the heavy mundane lifting for teachers and help them get more use of their time. So that was exciting. So we'll talk about it in some more couple of months. We'll have the professionals come in and educate us all on exactly what it is, and then we'll start discussions. Obviously, Superintendent Swiger, we will talk about how that looks and what groups we need to bring together to have this discussion, and then board members, as you all will start thinking about how you personally feel about it and what direction you'd like to take as we begin to form a policy. I would love to end the year having a AI policy that will start in the beginning of next year. That's kind of in my mind, whether that happens or not. But I think that for me, even that's a slow pace because of where the technology is going. You know, again, like I said, by next year, it's talking to you. And, you know, I'm of a generation, I still don't understand how I talk to this phone and ask Siri to get me this phone number, and it gets the phone number for me. So that's how fast this technology is going to be. So Chair recognizes Mrs. Thomas.
I would just maybe suggest that we have Holly Strand come to that session to maybe have some input, and maybe another session to update, just like she goes to all of the schools every year, or not all of them, but has to reiterate this. I think it would be good for her to come back again. I'm not sure that all of us were here for her last talk, and then we have 2 new board members as well. I don't know if Christine's been to one of hers, I'm sure, but it's good to be reminded of it, especially at the same time that we're talking about using the AI morality. So
yeah. I don't know how up to date you all are on it, but now you can take a picture of somebody and put their head on there and have them talking in their voice and have them saying anything. I mean, it's pretty, yeah, it can be that way.
So,
but again, we've got to try to harness the power of it and use it for good and not evil. So are you
yes, to follow up with that, my daughter was just talking to me today about how by using that same technology, the scammers are now getting out there where they're calling, and I might say, no, that person's not at this house. And they may ask another little question and I respond, and then they use that as some way to use that to call my husband at some point in time saying, hey, can you give me my social security number? I don't have it right now. They can use that. Obviously, it's that fast. I was talking to my kids and I already said, all right, if that happens and one of you calls me, we need to have a code word. And so what's the code word? And that's all I even need to say. And if they don't have that specific code word, and I've already done that with just, hey, I know you guys are going to parties if you're uncomfortable, and I call you and I say this word or whatever, and you say, yes, I'll come get you or whatnot. Same thing though, code word.
Just regarding policy, at Arizona State University, they have a policy. And it's basically just down to the teacher, which I would kind of like to see here, because what a math teacher might want to use it for might be a lot different than an English teacher, as far as the capabilities of it and that stuff. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. There's some things that are obviously banned, like you can't have it write your whole entire paper, that are kind of across the board banned, but then generally it's more of a whatever your teacher says goes kind of situation.
And just to jump in, and I know I can't raise my hand.
No, you're fine.
But way back, I worked with Steve Hengen to write our acceptable use policy for the internet and our computers.
Wow.
So that's how old I am.
Yeah.
But that said, I think what you're really talking about isn't so much as policy, what you can't do or what you can. I think it's best practices.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's really coming together as educators and board members and concerned citizens to just identify what the best practices are.
Sure.
And you're covered for plagiarism and other things like you just brought up, Michael, in your existing policy.
Yeah.
So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, and they did talk about that, looking at whatever you have, but it is important for us to talk about it, and maybe it just needs to be added to whatever we, are using. So maybe, you're right, we don't have to go to the drawing board just just add it to that, so that would be fine. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, isn't this wonderful? I will take a motion for adjournment. I keep missing something. Others, yes, no problem.
I just want to say, I find it really responsive, the PLCs and meeting across the district. When I visited schools last year, a lot of feedback I got was sometimes we feel like we're inside, we feel like we're functioning, and that we feel like that Blacktop doesn't know what crowd is, the crowd doesn't know what Knowles doing. So I think it's really great that administration is hearing that and moving forward with that. Because I do feel like that was a sentiment across the district, and like the field is connected, so I feel like it's a powerful way to build those connections.
Okay, anybody with an other? Are they? Did you time me? Was I that good that I just ended? That's awesome. All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, second. All right, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right, thank you all. See you.